Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Hello, everybody. Let me,
Hello.
Make sure I'm not blasting out this music here. Let me do a quick technical adjustment. It's Critical Cafe Live. Welcome to the Critical Cafe. My name's Brian, and this is Crystal, as always, the good-looking one of the show. So we have an episode today for episode 58 of Campaign 3. And we're on track this week. We didn't have to skip a week. We're going to be talking about one episode instead of two this time. So thanks for bearing with us when we had to double up last show with a double shot of our normal discussions. If you're new to Critical Cafe, welcome. If you're joining us in the chat, welcome there as well. We'll be able to chat with you as the show goes. We'll take some breaks as we kind of recap everything. Actually, we'll be using, as always, Danny Carr's Critical Recap to help us stay on track, and then we'll give our thoughts about how we sort of reacted when we were watching. If you're watching this later after the live session, you're watching the recording, you can still take part in the conversation. Just, make sure you comment, and we will reply as soon as we can so that we keep all your thoughts going in this community, and we can kind of keep the chat going with everybody. So and if you would like to support the channel at all or support Critical Cafe, you can always buy us a coffee if you like. There's a link in the description below. You can also head over to geekphilosophy.com and find out ways that you can support us there. We have an Etsy shop. We have some beautiful stickers that Crystal has just released recently on our Etsy shop. So if you're interested in some stickers, some gaming related stickers, maybe for your character sheet, maybe for your planner, we've got the Artificer and Druid.
Druid,
so
yeah.
far. Yep.
And then Warlock and Cleric will be released next. So
yeah, we're on a roll. So she's been cranking them out. We'll be posting them there. So if you're interested in that, we also have a lot of digital accessories that we have available on the Etsy shop. So campaign planning guides, a whole Dungeon Master planner that you can use. It's a PDF that you can use on its own, or you can use GoodNotes or some other application to make things easy. So check that all out. Just wanted to give a quick promo at the top of the call or top of the show before we dive right in. So anything I'm forgetting, Crystal, or are we ready to get moving?
I don't think so, other than the second we start talking, the cats start acting crazy. But
that's true. So our familiars will be making appearances and or sounds, and you may hear a child either coughing or singing in the background as well, and that's just the way things go at night here in the household. So yeah, all right, let's jump in. So let's go again. We are on Critical Recap, so head on over to critroll.com, and then you'll be able to see Danny Carr's recaps. This is also a great way, by the way, if you don't get a chance to watch before you watch our show, you can kind of read up and see what happened, because in addition to giving you sort of the what happened in the show, we like to give our feedback about everything, which is why you guys join us. So you can get caught up ahead of time if you like, but all right, let's start here. So we're catching up with this horrible creature that was really at the end of the last episode. They were in the building, and I'm pretty sure it was Travis that sort of kicked off the craziness, because he was climbing up and investigating some things, and then there was this creature that showed up, which apparently is named, and I must have forgotten this, but now seeing her writing it here, it's called the Hate Monger. I just didn't remember that. And so they're battling this. It's sort of this weird flesh and tentacled creature, and Imogen
mouths.
Mouths everywhere, and it's kind of taken. We'll see that it takes sort of inspiration from all the things around it. Imogen falls, and she heads down the staircase and then casts lightning bolt and that catches the tower wall on fire, which that becomes a theme. Fern is knocked unconscious, which is a little scary given the fact that we don't know what resurrection magic is going to be like. We don't think it's working at all, but we'll see. Um, and is consumed by the hate monger. So then Frida is able to pull her out of its stomach. Um, and then Deanna was able to heal Fern and get her back up to half health, which was great. The flames start spreading. The creature tries to get this sort of not really a final form, but a form that can sort of do what it needs to do in this battle. And it's getting inspiration from everything and the people around it. Deanna casts an extra death ward on Chetney, like as she runs by. And Chetney notices what's going on. Then the hate mugger goes down the stairs and starts to consume Imogen, but she's rescued by Fern this time, who kills the creature with burning hands. Meanwhile, FCG commands the magical circle on the wall to open, and when it does, they're able to find a satchel that's been hidden in there. If you remember from last time, they realized that casting some spells did something, but they weren't sure they needed a high enough spell. The fire that we talked about before is spreading, but Chetney and Frida like confirm that there's not anything else there. They kind of stayed back and confirmed that there was nothing else there that they could use. And then the hate mugger is not finished with them. It's like this vaguely humanoid figure, has bark skin, and it comes out of the creature's remains. So so that's where we are so far. Let's head over to the chat. If we've got anybody, we will bring them in. But Crystal, thoughts so far?
Well, this thing sounds horrible. It sounds disgusting. It's mouths. It's this huge tower of like rolling. It can consume people. And then whenever Matt pulls out the battle map, we also realize it's really huge too. Like I think at the end of the last episode, he talked about it, but we didn't have kind of a visual on how large it was. I was thinking it was a much smaller, maybe 5-10 feet at the most, but this thing is massive, and it's got mouths everywhere, and it tries to consume everyone. It's got legendary actions. I mean, it's just gross.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like I think somebody in the chat mentioned it last time. It's sort of this whole mix up of like monstrosity and almost body horror, right? Like it's kind of this weird mix of everything. So yeah, pretty crazy. But it was sort of what was expected, I think, when you saw little bits of and pieces of things as they're coming through. Plus, like, they just dealt with this whole Wolf King thing. So yeah, they're on a roll as far as all this stuff goes. And so and what were you like? I know that you and I both were like, oh, what's gonna happen? Like when Fern was down, like that was a crazy
it's very
thing,
scary.
right? Like,
yeah, it was very scary. Especially knowing that a lot of the resurrection magics weren't working properly. We don't know what's happening with the Raven Queen. We don't know what's happening in the realm of death. We don't know about any of that. I mean, they're able to heal each other, and that's great. And then they are still able to contact their gods in different manners, and so that's reassuring. But apparently, like, bringing anybody back from the dead is halted. So when Fern goes down, it was like, we were both like, oh no. And it's like, no, I hope she doesn't die. Please don't die. She's not really kind of known for rolling the best in these situations. So I was so scared that something was going to happen. But they were able to get her up really quick, which was great. And then Imogen falls down the stairs, and as she's falling down the stairs, she shoots a lightning bolt and catches everything on fire, and then like lands upside down. And then he, at some point, the hate monger or whatever it's called went down the stairs and tried to start consuming her as well, which it's just gross. Some of the sounds that Matt had for this creature was just making my skin crawl.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Sometimes it's awesome that he's so good at sound effects, but then
yeah,
there's sometimes it's like, oh, don't be so good at them right now.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, pretty crazy.
And then like they think they kill it, but then something kind of cracks and emerges from it.
Yep,
So
I know. All right, well, let's keep going. We'll see
yeah.
what happens as we go. Um, whew. Here we go. Okay, so we've got that. So the what's in the bag thing, right? So um, Imogen is sort of holding the creature at bay with this telekinesis field. And so once everybody is fled out of the tower, FCG casts Stone Shape and blocks the whole balcony thing off, sealing it inside. They climb down, but Frida falls, and that alerts the Wolf King to their presence. So they flee into the Savalier Wood, guided by Imogen, and lose the Wolf King. So they're able to escape, for the most part. But now they're in these cursed woods. So they find this thicket of brambles, and they're able to rest a little bit. And that's when they start inspecting the satchel. And this is where things get interesting. So the satchel is actually a bag of holding, or
Mhm.
a satchel of holding, I guess, which can store a bunch of stuff, as most of you know. And they kind of dump it out. And so they see a bunch of pages of notes by Ludinus, and coins and gems, a staff, this vest harness like thing, which gets a little comical, and then a wooden rod. And then we find that the staff is the staff of Dark Odyssey, which can cast teleport. So they now have a way, hopefully, of teleporting somewhere. So
Yeah.
this is a pretty big deal. So let's head over. So yeah, thoughts on this? Like, I think it was huge getting like the satchel out of there and then finding the things. But the biggest, in addition to the information, I think the information is probably the biggest chunk of lore that we've had so far from what was going on. But the staff is a big
Oh
deal
yeah.
that they can
Yeah, it's a
possibly
huge
get
deal.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently it has so many charges on it, and you can roll to, as days go by, you can roll to try to restore charges after you use it. And so once they figure out that it's the staff of teleportation, that's a game changer, really, because they're kind of stuck where they are. And what do they do? Where do they go from here? And then they've got all these cool notes that are kind of in like three different sections, talking about his experiments and the things that he's done, and the things that he kind of theorizes.
Yeah.
And then this weird, funky harness that has like a cone shape on the front.
Yeah, lots of comedy ensued with
Yeah.
that. It was that was interesting. We've got Andrew. Welcome to the
Hey,
chat. Thanks
hey.
for joining us. Glad to have you in again. Yeah, so the thing immediately, what it made me think about, I know, well, after all the other jokes that the cast was saying, but like it made me think, is this maybe one of the first iterations of what Odahan has? Like her Dunamancy backpack thing that she was
Yeah.
using. Maybe this is something like that, or it's sort of a way of getting the energy in. But we find out more as time goes on. So, yeah, thanks. I have to bring this in. So,
Oh,
yeah. Thank you very much, Andrew.
thank
So
you.
appreciate that. She definitely has the higher charisma of the two of us,
Oh,
but I'll
geez,
take it.
whatever.
So, yeah. Side note, like back in this is for those of you that have been playing D&D for a long time. Back in first edition or advanced, I don't think they had it in second edition. I can't remember, but there was another stat that used to be included. So you had your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and then they had another one called comeliness, and that was your physical beauty.
Comeliness?
Comeliness, like COM.
CU or CO?
No, CO. I mean, you can say it however you want or write it however you want, but in this case, it was
Yeah.
a stat. Somebody look it up, and if you remember that, hit me in the chat because that
Comeliness.
was
Nice.
yeah, Yeah, so like they separate. It was interesting because they separated out physical beauty versus like personality and like stuff like that. Anyway, either one, you've got the higher stats on both of those than I would have. All
Whatever.
right, so yeah,
In
so
the eye of the beholder.
yeah. Well, you know how many beholders eyes they have? They have a lot of eyes on a
So
beholder.
there's a lot of
One of them will
chances.
disintegrate you. So anyway, uh, yeah. So yeah. So that's what I was thinking is the whole like apparatus thing. But we do find out a little bit more about
Right.
what it might
Then
do.
there's
Right.
the piece of wood that
Yep.
is, I guess we find out it's attuned to a plane, or it's a tuning fork type
Oh, I
thing,
see.
like
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
plane, an astral plane.
Yep.
Um, so they got some really cool stuff out of the satchel. I was so glad that they found it, because otherwise, they had to exit quick. Imogen set everything on fire. It's raging, and then there's this other creature. So
Ah, he
I
found it.
huh? Yeah. He
Yeah, he
found
found it. Yeah, yeah.
it.
I knew I wasn't crazy. There was something there. That's
But I
great.
was so
Sorry,
glad
go ahead.
somebody had stone shape in order
Yes.
to, in an ingenious moment, shape the stone back around so that the creature couldn't. And you could hear, like Matt was saying, you could hear it roaring and like trying to beat through the stone as they were
Yeah.
exiting and getting to the little brambled area. So, um, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Sorry, not to take us off, but since Andrew took the time to definition of comeliness, as in beauty, the qualities in a person or thing as a whole give pleasure to the senses and a verdant countryside or yeah. So comeliness is that whole like physical
how
or
pretty you
visible
are.
beauty.
Yeah, physical
Yeah.
beauty.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks for checking on that. It's just funny.
Yeah,
And again,
super
they
cool.
kind of wrap that all up into
Yeah.
whatever now. So, um, and
I
I
guess
always
it's
think
just
everybody,
assumed. I guess it's just assumed when somebody has a high charisma that they're also attractive.
I see, and you know what's funny? Like in these, like fifth edition, even in third edition and stuff. Like I always assume that you can just have your character look like however you want them to look like, and because there's a lot of people that may look attractive in one way, but have a very low charisma. Like
Yeah.
you can't stand to be around them. They're not very persuasive. They're not very, So like I always separate the two, and I just feel like the role play aspect of every player has control over what their character looks like for the most part.
Yeah.
If that's just how the old school way though is like you got to roll for that. So I think they got away from that as time went on because who wants to play a game where you can't decide what you look like. So anyway, all right, well let's jump back over. Let's keep
Okay.
it rolling. But thanks again, Andrew, for checking on that.
Yes.
It's always fun to kind of think about all of the stuff that happened before. Okay, restoration notes. So Deanna casts Detect Magic, and so this gives her the ability to see what's on all these pieces of paper. So these notes that they found, nobody can see anything on them until she casts Detect Magic, and then it sort of starts to appear. She's able to see the script on it, and because it's Elvish, she's the only one that can read it. However, smart idea, Frida, because he or they can hear and then parrot back, like they can record people's sounds or voices and things like that. When she reads it aloud, now they have a record of all of the information. So there are about 3 batches of notes. The first one is talking about the experiments that we're trying to distill the nature of divinity down into an energy. And I think this is what the apparatus is really there to do. And then the second is sort of so there are also sketches or blueprints for the harness. So that's what they're trying to figure out, like what does that really do? And then there's glyphs on it. The harness was an attempt to recreate the natural magic that sustains the Warden of the Wild. So there are notes about Wildmount, or the Fae of Wildmount, and there are a bunch of locations, and some of them, 8 of them, have been crossed off. And the phrase about feeding the root. So there seems to be plans about this restoration sources into the Fae realm, and the harness was sort of like powered by all these entities, and maybe that's what is keeping Ludinus alive so long, is that like it's sort of filtering in the essence and feeding him his life energy, so to speak. So
He's a
really
vampire.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of ways it's similar, right? Like so, yeah.
With
So
not with
what did you?
blood, but with like magic energy.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's a lot of parallels to things that we already know, right? Like him trying to distill things down into an essence, to me, in a lot of ways, is what they tried to do with Dunamancy. It's tried
Hmm.
like all of these different things.
Yeah.
Um, it's people
Well, and
trying
they've
to
done
tap
it. They've
into
got
it.
vials
Yeah.
of the gray silvery substance.
Yep.
He was able to achieve that. And
Yep.
that is, like you were saying, that is what goes into Odahan's backpack as well. So I think that, you're not far off. I think that harness probably was the first, maybe it was one of the first prototypes, and then it just morphed down as years went on, and he found certain, uses for it. Because this has been, what, 300 years? 300 years or 400 years have gone
Yeah.
by since the ruin of, or the cataclysm at Malaismere, or the
Yep.
corruption at Malaismere. And so there's no telling, the stuff that he's experimented with, especially with the whole time travel stuff, what he's been able to come up with. Um,
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit. Not that I think anything is. I try to shy away from doing this too much because sometimes people take it as like, if I say it reminds me of something else, that I'm accusing someone of stealing an idea from somewhere, and that's not what I mean. I just mean the parallel of it, right? But it
right.
reminds me, if you remember, or if any of you have ever watched Arcane on Netflix, like when they were trying to crack the code of getting the magic, and like they had some people that were trying to do it basically through science to try to distill the essence down, and it was causing problems, and they were creating like those gemstone type crystal things, things were exploding. It kind of reminds me of like Ludinus trying to figure out, okay, well, here's all these things that are happening. I want to distill it down to its essence so I can use it for what I want.
Right.
And that's a common theme in a lot of different classic stories, but like I feel like that's a common thread that we've seen with him throughout a lot of
It's like a
things.
mad
So
scientist
yeah,
siphoning vampire almost,
it
Ugh,
it's something
bad
that I
dude.
haven't. Yeah, but like something that's really interesting about it is that um, there isn't. I don't think there's a direct correlation here, but in the older times of Aeor, they were able to create these Aormatons, and so it's almost like, didn't they do something similar to magically be able to create beings like Frida and FCG? Um, like, is there a fine line that people are walking between something as beautiful and as life affirming as FCG and Frida, and some of the other stuff that he's doing, which is like destructive? Like
Yeah.
it's just interesting to me, like this whole uh, two sides of the same coin, change bringer excluded, but like
Well, and I
just
think sometimes it depends on the route that's taken too. Are you killing life? Are you sucking someone's soul? Are you ripping magic out of them? Are you torturing people in the process? So
yeah,
in my mind, you can totally be a mad scientist, but not on the immoral end of things. You can skirt the edges of like nature and things like that, and try to bend the laws of certain things, but not go over the edge to where you're
yeah,
losing yourself with murdering people, or kidnapping folks and taking babies, or I think that there's a whole morality end of things, and it is a slippery slope sometimes, because if you're getting super close as the scientist and you think, okay, all right, I've tried everything, this is the only thing left.
yeah.
I don't know,
Well, a great thing about role playing games, or tabletop role playing games specifically, but in general, is that like you can do something as silly as a shopping episode, or baking cakes in the robot belly, or killing your riding goat like for no reason. You can do stupid, like silly, crazy
yeah.
stuff, but then you can also have things that really are important, almost philosophical questions that pop up in a game, like
Yeah.
essentially what is this game and collaborative storytelling, which is, I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing when you think about the the polar opposite things that can happen in the game.
Right.
It's
Right.
pretty cool. You can get a lot out of it. Well, let's keep pushing forward. Um, Here we go. Restoration notes. Okay, so now we are into Ruidus notes. So the second batch of notes contains the studies of Ruidus and how religious scripture and the temples, they fear the moon and they want people to look away rather than teaching them about the evils that might be there. And so they observe the flares. They have remarks on the Ruidus born there, and he talks. Ludinus talks about his own desire to have been born under a red moon out of spite. He writes about the plans to use a communion ritual during a flare to understand what is within Ruidus. So you got to think these are the glimpses early on and what his planning seems to be. There are notes about forgotten gods, divine unraveling, an ancient primordial that wasn't destroyed during the founding. The Emerald Cross priest attempted to undermine all the research, but he made contact with something, and communication is still beyond his abilities, but he wants to find a way to break through. So lots of stuff kind of revealed about what was going on in the early days. Ruidus and Andrew, yes, the passing of Giro the goat is is pretty great. Funny.
Poor thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on like what they're finding out about his early days of working on all this stuff?
I mean, are we shocked? No.
Yeah.
It directly ties into what's happening right now with the Apogee solstice and with Predathos. It's really fascinating to read his notes on his first encounters and his first tries to reach the entity that now we know is Predathos, I think. So it's kind of cool to get the backstory on how at that time the society and the people viewed the red moon and how it was very superstitious. They didn't want anybody to even look at it, and they kept they were still keeping notations of people who were being born under it, but it was kind of auspicious. It's very they didn't want anybody studying it, probably outside of them. And I think that's what the other wizards or the religious people, the people that are heads of the religious sects, I guess back then.
Yep.
And then what was it about the Emerald Cross?
So they were. It seems as if they were basically trying to quash some of what he was doing, but he wasn't.
They didn't want him looking into things more.
Yeah, and I also think that sort of I hate to say it, but sort of with a lot of cultures in the real world, sometimes the heads of certain organizations will put out things to make people stay away from something that might hurt them or whatever. It's sort of like where a lot of the old fairy tales come from and things like that. So it's almost as if they were trying to spread the word about beware because they knew something was wrong. And I feel like he was more upset that they just weren't saying, here's the truth of it.
Right.
But again, he wanted it for a different reason anyway.
Right.
So
he's seeking power. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep driving forward. So we are. So now we got the third batch. So first couple we've learned about what's been going on, but here we go talking about the expanding nature of the arcane crystals of the power well beneath Malaismir. And so Aramon theorizes that the well is a gift from the deity of the Archheart, while Esradon believes that the well fell from the floating cities in the Age of Arcanum. And Ludinus was focused on making adjustments to Armon's tunnels and harnessing the power of the well. And he planned to focus the well through his design while Ruidus was above during a solstice, sounding very familiar. He hoped to channel of consciousness would open, and that whatever was seeking his attention from Ruidus would communicate. So this is him going after things the exact way he just did, I think, just recently, right? So the group realizes that this is evidence that Ludinus likely caused the fall of Meleismere. No shock there. And they wonder who to show the notes to, but they aren't even sure that they can truly trust the king and queen of Uthadern, because there's no clear answer of like what they need to do next based on the information that they have, which is pretty interesting. So let's head back over. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, big shocker. He probably caused the total corruption of the whole city and the downfall of everything and all this yuckiness that we're seeing, right? I mean, he tried something and it didn't work. And then I think he's continued to try. He's worked his experiments. He's continued to build plans. He's continued to try to figure out ways to harness dudamancy and to harness, the red moon together. And, he has brought about mass, destruction and chaos in his time of trying to figure out a way just to reach the entity that he thinks is on the red moon, which is crazy to me.
Yeah. So let me ask you, this is kind of a side question, but we know a lot more about Ludinus now. How would you stack Ludinus up against some of the other big bads that have been in Critical Role? Like, how do you compare Ludinus to the Whispered One or the Briarwoods, or like how do you feel like, because they're all really bad, right? Like, but how do you feel like he stacks up against someone like, okay, we'll just use one, let's say against Delilah? How do you feel like?
So I kind of have them in like I think of the Whispered One, then Ludinus, then Delilah. I don't think that we've even seen what Ludinus can do.
Yeah.
I think he's single-mindedly trying to bring about the downfall of the gods. Whereas with Delilah, her whole thing was keeping Silas alive, keeping them together, making them a powerful couple, and then hopefully maybe immortalizing themselves, not so much bringing the downfall of all the gods. She wanted to be one. So I feel like he's above her in my mind. Now, once we have some more combat or we have more interaction with Ludinus himself, maybe it will change. But I feel like this 300-year, 400-year long like corruption that's out here from Meleismere, like this whole area, it's just this one thing that he's done.
I agree, actually. I 100% agree with you. I think that that's probably where I would rank it too. And not only that, but I think like he was the one that almost like got the groundwork running on the Cerberus Assembly. She was a later, addition to the Cerberus Assembly. He was like one of the originators of a lot of that stuff. So like power level wise, he's been around for a lot longer, working in the shadows. I am really interested to see how if they already have a connection, like from her time there.
Yes,
like,
me too.
Like,
do they converge?
Yeah. And if they do, it makes me wonder like how like the whole deal with Laudna will play into this stuff, because I think there's got to be some additional connections there that we don't know about. But
and I don't think that I don't think that we read it just now, but part of the notes, he was obsessing over finding the name of the Raven Queen. Like, what's her
Yeah.
name? What's her name? Where can we find it? We've got to figure, a name means power, like, and so that ties back into Vax. And it'll be really interesting to kind of see where everything, we already have Delilah and Laudna existing ish, because we don't really know what's going on with Delilah right now, but she's still a player.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing with the Raven Queen and Vax being her champion. And then him being the one, kind of pressed into the ball of the lens to
Yep.
shoot the beam up to. And so that makes me wonder, do you think he found her name? Is that is that what gave him power over Vax, the champion, the
It's
Raven Queen
really
champion?
interesting. Yeah. That's really
I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
because apparently when somebody ascends to godhood, their name's wiped out, right? Like, nobody has memories of who that person was. It's a very vague.
I think you're right. Yeah. And we all kind of have that, I don't know, that gut feeling about like just names and magic and what it's all about, right? So
Right.
I feel like if he did find that out, there's a control aspect. It makes me also wonder if he was trying to shoot for someone's name that is so hard to find, like the Raven Queen. What other names does he have?
Right.
Like,
Right.
what else has he done to like have people um, under his thumb? So yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
So it'll be, just with the notes themselves, it gives them so much information. Just at the beginning, it seems like, of his obsession.
Yeah,
So, and then there's been, hundreds of years worth of that going on from there. So there's so much backstory. There's so much wealth of knowledge there between, them finding these notes and where he's at now and what he's able to
yeah,
accomplish. But it seems like he stayed very much in that same lane, though, like,
yeah.
still trying to find something powerful enough, harness something powerful enough, make something powerful enough to reach whatever's in the red moon.
I agree. It's gonna be interesting to see what the other half of Bell's Hells has been up to and like
Yeah.
what's going on there too. So whew, we'll see. All right, well let's keep it going. Um, all right, so now we've got this section, the Aeorian mind meld. So Frida is still bothered by the feeling that they got when they were in the Guild Hollow Tower. So FCG and Imogen, they try the mind meld. So first, Frida gives FCG a present, hoodies that bear the heart that contain the word may a automaton inside the heart. I thought it was really cool. By the way, it's not just FCG and Frida. It was Sam and Christian. So it was fun that they brought those out. Yeah, the mind meld begins, and Frida, FCG, and Imogen find themselves in a waiting room with two doors. And then when Frida opens the door, they are pulled down an energy river of memories. They see D rousing Frida from when they were asleep, and then they survive in the wilderness. They wander some unfamiliar streets. They feel Frida's protective energy with children that we've talked about before. Frida tries to find another memory and feels their first headache. So a white light emerges from them, and then they see a flash of warfare. And the battle is occurring in a stone hallway. Frida's a warrior, cutting down the enemies, dressed the same as their comrades. So Frida realizes that their past self is hurting friends, sadly defending the stronghold from an army within. The path behind them leads to a massive chamber that holds an immense mechanical and arcane contraption, and there are dozens of mages focused on the machine. A voice shouts out to protect the Factorum, and the room vibrates, and then all goes to white. So, yeah, interesting mind meld action there. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, um, the whole going back and kind of seeing his more recent things was, and D was cool. But it was really interesting when they started talking about him being in this fortress or in this place trying to protect this big machine. And so I know that the group talked about it a little bit, but I think that was back from like the Aor time and the floating cities and things. And it was one of these big contraptions. So I wonder if that is what fell to Malaismere and then became their well of power. If it's connected in that way, or if it's just another thing of that nature, like how they had the lay riders and the things like that with Laren, and all the stuff that she was working on. How all these big machines and all this stuff is connected to harnessing, more power. And so it'll be interesting to see if that is what actually fell.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, there is almost like a few different time periods where things that were either destroyed or fell down. Some of it was pre, um, you know, calamity stuff, like the residuum and all that kind of stuff. But then there are things like when Aor fell and all these other, like all the remnants of the machines and the highly advanced magic that was there during that time.
Right.
Yeah, just really interesting, like to see, are they now the sort of fonts of energy that people are trying to tap into? Like you said, maybe they're the thing underneath,
Right.
is trying to be
Well, you remember, like with
controlled.
Lucius in Mighty Nine, they were going and harvesting these large stones out of the ruins of Aor and those different
Yep.
sites. And for people, though, like they were hired to do that stuff. So because they held power. And so it reminds me of that. All of that I think is lewdness. It's all him trying to figure out what power works, how much of it do I need. Let's try. Let me excavate from this site and excavate from that site and see what all I can gather. And over time, he has created the Malleus Key now. And so even whenever they were looking at it earlier in the season, they were talking about how there's components from Aor, there's all these mechanical parts that are familiar to FCG because they look like, parts from Aor or parts from back whenever he was around in the capacity that he was built for. But,
Yep.
I think it's just a amalgamation of everything that he's found and researched, and what he's been able to get his hands on, because apparently he's just got endless resources.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, he's been around long enough. He must have he must have been squirreling away his copper, to
yeah,
make sure that he had
he
enough.
amassed those
Yeah.
fortunes that vampires amass long term. Like
He invested. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep it going. So after the mind melt. So okay, protector. So Frida, Imogen, and FCG, they wake up. They come out of the whole mind melt. They talk about what they saw with the others, and Chetney recalls the Factorum Malleus, the god-killing weapon from Aor. Frida realizes that they were there when Aor was destroyed, and Dee had to repair their body from basically utter ruin. They were just almost demolished. Frida still feels like they missed something from the vision. Sort of not really sure what it is, but they still think there's something else that they need to tap into there. They're unsettled by what they saw. They hurt people, um, all to protect a machine. The group tries to cheer up Frida, reminds them about all the good they've done. Um, Frida does not return Deanna's hug, but is touched by a gift from Chetney, which is a wooden robot. Chetney reminds Frida that they are a protector, and Frida decides that the past doesn't matter as much as what comes next. And the fight is now Deanna and Frida's fight, and they want to return to Marquette with the others, which is really interesting. that's where we are. So let's bring back over. So yeah, so it seems as if Frida kind of realized that they had some issues too, in a similar way that like FCG had a snapping incident in modern
Right.
day.
Right.
And was worried about themselves in the past. Now Frida seems to be a little worried about what they did in the past too. So
Yeah. Well, and how convenient that it's the Factorum Malleus, and now we have a Malleus key. I mean, this is big hints.
yeah, I mean,
So it's
no
definitely got to
coincidence
be
there.
part of
Yeah.
that machine, that
Yep.
Ludinus has as the main hub. Um, and but my thing with that, the whole thing with Frida though, is that you don't know why he was protecting it. We don't get the sense that he was just. I don't know. Who knows
Yeah.
if protecting the machine was because it would protect more people. Who knows if it's maybe that's what caused the downfall of that city. Maybe it's that falling. You just don't. He feels really bad and he feels really guilty for things, but he doesn't have the whole picture. So
That's true. Or protecting the machine against maybe others that were going to do something wrong with it,
right,
like maybe he was protecting it against the power of someone like Ludinus.
right.
um I don't know, but yeah, you're right, like we have to have more information
Yeah. Well, and I
to
think
figure out what's
he
going on there.
didn't roll too great, which is why I think he didn't learn some things and why he still feels like there's unfinished business. Like he didn't he has like an itch that he can't quite put aside. So I'm hoping that they kind of revisit it. I hope they go back in. I hope that he gets some better roles and we can kind of figure, or something jostles his memory, somewhere along the way, so that we can actually, because I was intrigued whenever, he wasn't quite getting some of the information just because of the roles that he had. So it'll be cool to kind of hear what the rest of that is. Hopefully,
I
we get it.
agree, yeah,
And now they're
100%.
coming with us. So
Yeah, so let's see how that turns out. I'm skeptical, but we'll see.
why are you
uh,
skeptical?
I just feel like something's gonna happen on transport.
Oh
But
yeah,
we'll see. Yeah. So Deanna and Chetney and Fern.
gosh.
Deanna walks away. She's emotional. Chetney joins and says, she's worried about she's being left behind again. Frida seems to be moving on. She wonders if she's go back to Uthodurn, but Chetney says, "Hey, she has been helpful and asks about Death Ward, and she explains it was important, or he was important to her, and didn't want anything to happen to him." Chetney made a gift for Deanna, a wooden shell, which is a reminder of their time in the Menagerie Coast. Never forgot her, bright spot in his life. He loves that she had a family, but now she can do whatever she wants. She has a place with him and the friends, and her future is bright. Deanna mentions that she finds his werewolf self attractive, so Chetney wolfs out, chases her. Deanna calls out to Fern, and they all go have a wonderful time in the woods.
They all go
Um,
frolicking.
yeah. Pause to talk or keep going.
We could keep going.
Okay, I had a feeling. Uh, so, what a god wants. So, uh, in the morning, everybody discusses where they should teleport, with Dressar and Whitestone as the top options. It would be interesting if they go to Whitestone. But FCG casts Commune to ask the Changebringer. He finds himself at a crossroads, surrounded by infinite paths, with the Changebringer in the distance. The goddess actually, this is a little bit more direct this time, confirms that their friends are alive and there's a chance to find them in Drusar. FCG asks if he will know Frida for a long time. She cannot say because the future is not set. Suddenly, the figure rushes FCG and towers in front of him. She tells him that a terrible fate looms as an alien malice menaces the sky in Marquette. If FCG wishes to show their faith, they need to rise to this call. Change is coming, but hope remains in him. He must traverse the path. She alights for him if he turns away. Shadow awaits. The red end stirs in its slumber. Do not let it wake. At the same time, Deanna falls asleep. the Dawn Father comes to her, basically, actually in the sky within her vision, and tells her that it was her mortal arrogance that made a union with the forbidden scourge, and commands her to strike at those who seek to snuff out their light. If she forsakes her gifts, she will be abandoned. Faith needs neither logic nor truth, but unerring conviction. He also says the red end stirs in slumber. Do not let it wake. So, interesting. A little bit
Yeah.
of direct communication from the gods. Thoughts?
Well, I thought that FCG's communication with the Changebringer was a little freaky, just with how like she was far off, but then she was like suddenly advanced, and then saying that the same thing that the Dawn Father said to Deanna. But I really felt like the Dawn Father with Deanna, like he was demanding. He was, it's like instead of asking, can you help? He was pretty much demanding that she has to go and she has to champion this cause or else, and she bristled against that because she's like, you're not gonna tell me what to do. But I it's kind of tough because even if the god's being an ass, what really is still the right thing to do and what's not the right thing to do, and if they're both having these dreams at the same time, they're getting told the same stuff, there's affirmation that yet again there's more things going on in that realm than they know, and that they're feeling very threatened. And I think that was Matt's way of showing how each god kind of handles feeling threatened,
Yeah.
but it still was, the interactions weren't stellar in my mind. I'm like, I mean, if you really want somebody to help you out, don't be a jerk. Don't demand, don't threaten, don't whatever. You can get
Yeah.
across how important it is without being a jerk. But
It's interesting. Like, I don't know. I feel kind of two ways about it. Like, I feel exactly what you said, but then I also, at the same time, kind of like, it sort of runs the line of like cleric and their god and warlock and their patron, right? And to me, the essential difference is with a cleric and their deity, it's there isn't like the same type of deal that's made. There's not like a pact that's made like with a warlock and patron. It's just sort of, you are so devout and you have so much belief and you're trying to spread the word that the god grants you these powers because of your faith and that's the way I look at it, at least. Like, and so with a warlock, it's like you pat my
you
back, I'll
barter,
pat yours,
right?
like it's sort of it's a bargain. So you do something to get the other. So it's almost like if you're one of the gods and you're like, okay, well, I've got a cleric that I'm granting powers to that is no longer doing any of the things that I want them to do. They're kind of turning their back on me. Why am I going to grant them power anymore? And really, the only reason he is because it's like he needs help, and it's like I feel like in one way you can look at it is like, man, he's being really demanding, and you know if you just would ask nicely, she probably would have said yes. On the other way you can look at it is, he's like, I'm giving you all these powers and you've been doing nothing. Like, like, so it's interesting because like it's probably very rare that you're actually ever able to talk to the deity. Like, most people aren't able to do that. So I think it's interesting. Like, when you put it into that context, it's almost like, man, things have to be really bad for them to actually show up. And if you're him and she doesn't like feel willing to do that, can't he just go, all right, I'll give your powers to someone else who can help me? Like
Yeah.
it's a like he's in some serious trouble. So I don't know, like I completely see both sides of that, like him being like, man, I'm trying to do what I can do here, and now they're going to destroy me. So
Right.
um
Well, and I still find the circumstances of her coming back to life weird. I mean,
yeah,
she was dead. I don't think she asked to come back to life. She just was back. She was awake one day. She was in the sea and was peaceful, and then the next thing you know, she's back and living and breathing. So it's almost like I think he feels like he did that for her, and so he owns her almost. Like I.
yeah,
And if
probably
that goes
so.
away, does she die?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like, and also, like, is it still following the same rules that Matt has in play in the world, where like the only way you can come back is if the soul agrees to come back?
Yeah.
Like, like that's been a thing. Like where, you can have the power to bring someone back, but they have to agree to do it. So I wonder if that's the same case, or if she was actually forced. Um, so I don't know. It's interesting. Like no matter what goes on with the personality stuff there, like it's just telling that there's like this huge problem that they're
Right.
having that they can't handle on their own. They actually need the mortals to help them, which says a lot about
Right.
how bad it is. Yeah.
It
All right. Well,
is
let's.
SCG becoming the champion of the Changebringer.
That would
I had
be
that question.
really interesting. Yeah. Man, I don't know. Okay. So to finalize the episode here, so FCG and Deanna describe their visions. They kind of talk about what's going on. They both kind of felt like they were threatening, and they were already willing to help, but they said, this is them really being forceful. Although FCG realizes that their coin is a magical item now, so Deanna gives Chetney her ring of temporal salvation, so he can have a second chance. And then Deanna discovers that the wooden rod is a tuning fork to the Fey realm for the plane shift spell, which makes sense. Chetney takes it and the bag of holding, and he used a similar bag when he was commissioned by the Cerberus Assembly. He had made them chairs that they were enchanted to kill everyone, and then moved to the center of the room. And he was kicked out of the Veterans from Troy Authority, which the RTA is the real reason for his tattoo, not respect the Alpha, which was really funny.
And the chair. Remember
yeah,
the chair.
and we got the chairs now.
Yeah.
Imogen attunes to the staff and decides to teleport to Zudana's home in Drusar, where she lived with Laudna, and she casts a spell, and the group is pulled into a new space, but we don't know where, we don't know if it's successful, and that's how the episode ended. So yeah, really interesting. I have my own feeling of whether or not they're all gonna make it there or not.
Yeah.
Maybe they will, who knows. That's a lot of people in one aspect, metagaming a little bit. It's a lot of people to have at a table, but it's possible, right? Like to do it. They've done it before. They've had 2 extras. So we'll see if everybody's there. Or the other thing that I'm kind of concerned about is, not concerned, but I'm wondering, there was an assumption that both halves were going to have, both halves were going to have their own arc. Like we assumed that then they would shift over and we would see, here's what's going on with the others. Maybe that's not going to happen. Maybe time stood still for them and they just all get caught up and it's the same point in time. Like who knows what's going on, because we're talking about dunamancy and temporal stuff. Maybe there isn't going to be probably there would be, but it would be interesting if like when they teleport over there, it's like bamf, everybody shows up and they're all together at the same time.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah.
crazy.
It would be. It would be crazy. Um, I'm just anxious to kind of see what tomorrow's episode holds. Do they all get there like they're supposed to? Because that's the concern for me is like who gets lost along the way.
Yeah. It
And
would
then
be.
yeah. And then the chair from the Mighty Nine, the chair that they found in the basement from when Knott's husband was being tortured. That's exactly what he was trying to imply, is that he made that chair. So, because there was so much that went on, but like they tried to check that chair so many times.
It is funny.
So I thought that was funny. It was cute.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Then his stupid tattoo.
I mean, it's pretty great that they kind of they pulled all that together. So
yeah, I agree.
Well, can't wait to see what happens next. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks Andrew for joining us live, and everybody else that's joining us later. We will catch you next time. Don't forget to head on over to geek-philosophy.com to check out all of our other stuff. But until then, we will catch you on the next show. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.